We're recording today on the lands of the Jagera people, and we acknowledge the traditional elders here, past, present and emerging. Heaps of work to be done in this space. Hello everyone, I'm Andrea. I'm a former registered nurse and midwife and a community advocate.
And I'm Tim. I'm a digital marketer and social media manager.
Today we're talking to Ben Pennings, who's actually done a lot of protesting work throughout his life. Ben, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been up to lately?
Yeah, the last few years I've definitely moved back into the environmental activism space. So yeah, previously did that when I was very young at Greenpeace, but yeah, worked for a long time in different community organisations as a social scientist. But the last few years with the climate crisis and reading that I've done and being a little bit scared by the science and the economics moving slower and society moving slower than it needs to be, I've been privileged enough to really work in the space of environmental activism, particularly around thermal coal, but also gas as well, and be really focused on climate change as the existential crisis that it is.
Yeah, I actually came across you in social media when I was looking for somebody to advocate for people who were marginalised, and I was disabled, using a wheelchair, and couldn't get access to my my local school, to get wheelchair access in the local school, and I was looking for someone to help advocate for wheelchair access. And I was madly Googling, looking for people who could advocate for, for social justice on these sorts of things. And, your platform was pretty out there. Like, you were quite well known. It was one of the first sort of people who came up who was out there advocating for, for these sorts of social justice things. So, I mean, yeah, you're pretty easy to find and pretty well known that you stand up for social justice causes. But it seems like you've really pissed these people at Adani off. Can you tell us what's happened between you and these Adani people?
Yeah, it's been a bit of it's over many years now. So yeah, with the Galilee Basin, I was involved in the reasonable early days before Adani, or before Adani was the most likely project. There used to be a company called GVK. GVK Reddy is another multi-billionaire from India working with Gina Reinhardt to open up some mines there. And there was a lot of work went on, and the movement was quite successful in stopping that project. But then, Adani, through a very friendly federal government in particular, with the NAIF loan that came up with Matt Canavan, really got more serious with regards to their mining leases in the Galilee. So, I was one of the most public people in this area, particularly the most public people talking about civil disobedience and non-violent direct action. So, with others, I started a group called Galilee Blockade. We've been seen to have a lot of success over time with regards to engaging contractors and banks and others working with Adani. I can't really be too specific about our successes or failures because of the court case going on. But obviously Adani have thought that myself being a very public person in this area and Galilee Blockade being seen not only by Adani but by the federal government as well, seen to have a lot of success to really go at me in the court. So about 15 months ago, yes, my wonderful wife opened the door to a dude with a big stack of folders of legal documents, and I knew straight away what it was. Because when you are working in this space, there is always, it's only small, but there is a threat that a company can decide to spend what ends up being very many millions of dollars to try and shut community members up who are quite vocal in this area. So that's what's happened, like what's called a SLAP suit, which is strategic litigation against public participation. And they have Yeah, it's the biggest one in 20, 30 years, basically. It's a massive suit with a number of torts, alleging, damages and conspiracy and information conspiracy and, all sorts of things which are, it was a bit overwhelming to receive. And I have spent the time getting really good legal advice, and it's expensive. I've had to raise $450,000 so far, and there's been, 8,500 people or so, community members have donated that, which has just been extraordinary to see because, people care about democracy. They care about, bullying.
Yeah.
Ultimately, to me, it's a guy, Gautam Adani's worth almost $100 billion now. Like, it's extraordinary, silly money, wealthier than Gina and Clive and all those people put together. And, going after someone like myself with a house in the suburbs. And if they are successful, I become bankrupted. We have to sell the house. We love our place. We've been here a number of years. The kids love it. They've been here years. We've got a specific, situation set up with one of the kids who has a disability, and that's really benefits her. And we'd have to sell the house, and people hate that, and they are drawn towards that David and Goliath story. So it's been really tough. And it has worked to a point, as in 15 months, not much seems to have happened in the Supreme Court, and there could be a couple of years ahead. But Galilee Blockade have kept going and doing their thing, without me. I'm just one of many of thousands upon thousands of people around Australia and the world who are, trying to stop the extraction and selling and ultimately burning of thermal coal from the Galilee, which we just don't need.
Yeah. Why do you think they're so threatened? I mean, if they're such, billionaires, why are they so threatened by you? I mean, in the same sense, we've seen in the news recently that Peter Dutton sued and successfully sued some guy who made a Twitter comment, wasn't it? I mean, why are they so threatened by these people?
Well, part of it is to scare others. So it's been quite a challenge my end about some of the dodgy things that Adani have done in this case, including having myself followed, my wife followed, following me, walking kids to school, all that sort of stuff, which is just horrific, and people are, rightly horrified by. So do we talk about it? Because if we talk about it, we scare others, but we should talk about it because it's what this company shouldn't be doing, and this company should be whacked over the head in the media for doing such dastardly things. So, but we don't want to scare others, and I'm very happy to say that there is people of all ages, using non-violent direct action, using civil disobedience, peaceful protesters being really staunch and strong to stop the insanity which is new coal and gas.
And at the end of the day, I mean, we've just had COP26, and around the world they've said that we shouldn't have new coal and gas. And our federal government has conceded and said, we shouldn't have new coal and gas. So, what are they fighting for then? It just seems insanity. I don't understand. So how do these large corporations actually get a say in politics? How do you think they actually get a say in our politics, Ben?
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of levels to that, in my opinion. There is the long-term, systemic basis of that. Big corporations are important. They have been important for a long period of time, and they've been central to the a capitalist economic system for a very, very long time. There is the whole we have to keep growing the economy, is that growth is always good, grow. And talk about jobs rather than what type of jobs we want and what that provides us and the value that gives us. So it's that extreme focus on, economic growth is one way that it can be talked about, but it's also, money, basically. Follow the money, as they say, is that in Australia, but also in the US and many other countries, corporations are able to donate huge amounts of money, often in secret, to political parties, and they don't do that for nothing. And they do it in different ways, and they sneak around and they do whatever they can to have that influence. So it's pretty much against any corporate charter who are meant to provide their shareholders with maximum profit to give away money to political parties. They're not giving it away, they're using it for influence. And they've done that quite successfully. And there's been very close relationships, that revolving door between various industries and the government as well. And corporations use the money that they've got to bully politicians as well. And they bully politicians not to look beyond short-term outcomes. And we saw Adani has bullied Queensland Labor in particular, when there was the possibility of getting some decent pokies legislation through with regards to protecting people. The pokies industry went berserko when the super profit mining tax was proposed. We had billionaires throwing money in to try and kill that and threaten people just by outspending them in an election campaign.
Yeah, Tim and I actually saw that movie Big Money. Do you remember that, Tim? Was there any parts of that movie that stood out for you?
No, yeah, this is the Craig Rucastle film, and I think hearing you talking about this, Ben, like it's we should be outraged. I think this is the thing. It's like I'm sitting here going, yes, they do that. Yes, that buys some influence. Like, I think the really interesting thing is when you talk to voters and they acknowledge this is kind of out there. Like, everyone realizes this, but we just all kind of, I guess, accept it, and it's certainly some of us are a lot more active in pushing back against it. But why is it, do you think, that we tend to acknowledge, as a community, acknowledge that this is all happening, but just go, well, that's the way it is?
Yeah, well, the bar has been lowered over time. Like, people are outraged, but they have a very low opinion of politicians, and they have a reasonably low opinion of lots of corporations, and that opinion has gone down and they expect less. So it's a real challenge to say that we deserve this and we deserve a healthy democracy. And ultimately, it's that we get the democracy that we pay for, and we're not paying for a chunk of it. It's corporations that are paying for it, and they get the benefit. So, and it is a really hard argument to say that we should have more politicians or that we should have more public money, going into politics. But if we don't, the money comes from elsewhere, and the people putting money in get the say. Like, even just this morning, I was reading in Brisbane Times, have an exclusive where Queensland Labor, who are talking about being more transparent, had a big cash for access lunch. To go to this, the elite business people spend $5,500 a head.
Yeah.
They have a lunch. They can talk about whatever they want over lunch, but because it's not classified as a meeting, we don't know who was there.
Yeah.
So, they're hiding this cash for access. So, and for $5,500 a head, then they're not doing it for the food. They're doing it for who they can talk to and the influence they can have. And, I can't afford $5,500 to go and have, lunch with a cabinet minister. But that's what happens. And
see, this is where it's not actually... you're not actually on an equal footing. I mean, the people of Logan and the outskirts of Brisbane, it is a lower socioeconomic area. I mean, we do have the ability to organise, which is, what you've been really good at doing, Ben, is, organising people, provided they're able to voice their opinions, verbally and they're able to, access places physically, if there's a ramp to areas. But, they don't have the money to be able to, like you say, to go to these meetings because they don't have, they don't have the $5,500 to go to these dinners with these politicians or these lunches with these politicians. And that really isn't putting people on an equal footing with these larger, corporations, these property developers and these, these rich business owners who are able to have their influence in politics. And, that's really unfair. I know I was a candidate for the Stretton election. And, there were certain things that did make it unfair for a woman in a wheelchair in that election. First of all, the pre-poll areas, not all of them were wheelchair accessible. So where the candidates were able to access all of the pre-poll areas, to meet their constituents. I wasn't able to meet all of the constituents myself because not all of them were wheelchair accessible. There was another incident where, the pre-poll area was quite unsafe, where there was traffic in the car park, moving in and out of the car park, and the returning officer came out and asked me to move from the car park because he thought it was quite unsafe for a person in a wheelchair to be there, but he didn't ask the other two candidates to move from the car park, which made it quite, it was quite a difference between a person in a wheelchair being, handing out how to votes in that area compared to someone who wasn't in a wheelchair. So there's a difference between being in a minority group and, compared to other people. There's not a level playing field for people to actually access politics, whether you're a lower socioeconomic group, whether you're in a minority group, whether you're a person with a disability, all these sorts of minority groups. It's certainly a person with a disability certainly doesn't have the money that these, billionaires and rich people have as well for these cash for access meetings to influence politics, as well as the private school access. I mean, we know that, well, I'm not sure of the numbers, but the people who are in federal government now, there's a lot of them that went to the same private school down there in New South Wales. And the fees to go to those private schools is out of this world. I don't have the figures on me at the moment, but yeah, I mean, they all go to this same elite private school down there in New South Wales. And it's like, well, if you didn't go to that school, you don't get to be in our federal parliament, It's
yeah, and I think we need to put that elite in inverted commas because it's seen that way and it's talked about that way, and there is this still ingrained perception of they're better than us, they're more worthy or whatever it may be, and because, as you're saying, Andrea, the access with regards to disability or cultural background, but ultimately there's that financial restrictions, is that if you're working two jobs to pay a mortgage, or if you can't afford childcare, or if all this sort of stuff, you're less able to go along and participate.
That's right.
In the political process.
That's right.
And having a sexist or racist culture within politics, stops people engaging as well with regards to physical and emotional and psychological safety, engaging in that process. So there's all those barriers there, much beyond the financial.
That's right. And then we get to, once they're in Parliament, we have a look at our slush funds that they have. We've had the sports rorts where they have those slush funds, and then they want to stay in power in those, in those particular seats. So they give out all this money to those areas where they want all those particular people to vote for them. So, and people accept it. Again, the bar has been lowered, as in back. I'm a bit older than you guys, but when I started following politics in the early '80s, that stuff was just unacceptable. People would have had to resign from cabinet and resign from parliament for what these days we would see as a tiny thing and hardly makes the newspaper. People were resigning for, and the bar has been lowered that they can get away with so much, and they're getting better at hiding things or justifying things. And part of it is it's up to the electorate to give them a whack. And I firmly believe there's a lot of work to do, that this upcoming federal election, I think it is going to be really challenging for the LNP to get in again. And part of that is just, it's not one thing, it's just the constant, scandals and corruption and allegations of corruption and the misuse of funds and the rorts. It's just so hard to keep track of it all. There's been so much. And I've been chatting with my parents recently, who are quite conservative people and being conservative voters, and I suppose they do swing vote sometimes, and they're in that situation where they just, even though they're conservative Christians, the same as Scott Morrison is, I don't think they can vote for him. Wow.
It's just got that bad. And I get encouraged by that with regards to them being very values-based people and saying, well, despite that he, what's the word for it, matches our values in some ways with regards to honesty and integrity and someone who says what they'll do, he's just not up to it.
I think...
And
yeah. Sorry, Tim.
So, just to throw in a question here, with that film, The Big Deal, they were talking about, as a potential solution here is, they were highlighting the independent movement or indeed, parties like the Greens that don't take political donations. That solution to the problem almost seems like, a really obvious thing to do. But what do you think are the barriers for people to kind of jump that hurdle?
There's, finances are part of it. Like the Greens, for example, don't take corporate donations. So, there's that financial barrier straight away. And it's really important they do that and they differentiate themselves, but it means they've got less money to be able to engage, people as they would like to. So that's one of the really important reasons to take corporate money out of politics, is not just because it affects decision-making in a way that doesn't benefit the voters, it benefits corporations, is that it keeps this unlevel playing field there with regards to what parties can do. And it's really hard for independents, it's really hard for some of the smaller parties. So One Nation as well, happy to take corporate money. So it was a really interesting thing in the Adani fight over the years, is that many years ago, the One Nation were against the Adani coal mine. That may have been around racist reasons, for example, but they were definitely against the Adani coal mine. Adani donated 50 grand to One Nation, which they gratefully accepted, and then not soon later, afterwards, they changed their tune.
There you go.
So there's a very clear, timeline there. So Labor doesn't take money from Adani anymore, but they used to, and they have. Adani have definitely gone to the cash for access things with Queensland Labor cabinet ministers over the years as well. And it's extremely frustrating for community members and activists on the outside, and you can feel disempowered. But one of the reasons for peaceful protest and activism is to show people the power that they've got. But you've got to do beyond that. You actually got to work in the within the electoral system we have as well, and support the parties and the candidates that meet your values and have the policies that you want to see, and push for better. Like a lot of people, for example, have environmental concerns or social justice concerns, will go, Labor's better than Liberal, I'll just vote for them. But they've got policies which are ultimately are nowhere near the best, and environmentally that will, lead to climate chaos. I mean, I'm very passionate about people pushing for better.
Something else I've noticed that I'm just not quite sure how I feel about it is when I've been to things in the community, like, I've been to like school PNC meetings, and there's a Labor member on the PNC, or I've been to, anything in the community, business council meeting, or some sort of board meeting, and there's a Labor member on that board, and I'm just not quite sure how I feel about that. Whether I feel like Labor is infiltrating these places for political gain, or whether this is actually a good thing for these people to be in our community. How do you feel about it? Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Obviously it depends on motivation, and unfortunately you've got to be a little bit dubious because it is seen as a pathway. It is a way to meet people and get actively involved, and helping out the school is great, but it's not just that. So you have all these, different suburban Facebook groups that they encourage people to, and they're very either clearly or surreptitiously run by people from political parties in the background to, benefit their cause. So, and there is...
If it was transparent, maybe it would be better. If they said, this community Facebook group is actually run by Labor.
Yeah. And then the other side gets tempted to do the same thing, and you get a race to the bottom rather than a race to the top. So
Well, this has been a really interesting conversation, Ben. I think, I think at the end of the day, we kind of need an ICAC, like, you know, a federal ICAC. How do you feel about that? Like, you know, some transparency and, you know, some ethics in politics. Have you got 3 big ideas for how we move through this coronavirus period, open up the economy and, you know, bring some less corruption to politics?
Yeah, I think an ICAC is really important, and it's been really interesting to see what's happened in New South Wales over time. And New South Wales are actually the first state to ban property developer donations because of all sorts of dodgy things that happened there. But what was really interesting was that the property industry kept doing it. And they kept trying to find back doors, and some of them ended up in jail. It just showed the almost, you know, parasitic relationship between the property industry and local government, you know, in particular, and how tied and symbiotic that relationship was, that even though there was jail terms at the other end, they were still doing it. And, you know, I think there should be a lot of politicians federally scared with an ICAC, particularly if it's retrospective, because of all the dodgy stuff that's gone on. I'm really proud that, you know, I'm a member of the Greens, and the Greens have been pushing this for a very long time. And Labor didn't want it for a long time. It's only through the Greens embarrassing them and pushing for it now Labor are supporting it. The LNP are very much resisting. But it's also about the powers, you know, that it has and what it can do, and the independence and the financial independence. Because in New South Wales, they've slowly been taking money away from ICAC as well. But ultimately, I think there's, you know, electoral reform and taking corporate money out of politics are just as important, because, you know, we can see every day decisions not being made for us, and there is, you know, companies, including through the coronavirus period, really profiteering, you know, what ultimately is our money that we've worked hard for. They're profiteering and getting that money and then buying extra yachts or whatever else they do with that ridiculous amount of money they have.
Yeah, and I guess just like Tim's wanted, you know, to allow people to what was your words in your 3 big things, Tim? To let people organise or something. It wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
it was kind of that sense that, like, yeah, you know, the ability for the community to organise themselves. I mean, much like what you've been doing, Ben.
Without being sued.
Doing so, but yeah, like when a community does that in numbers, like we have so much more collective power than I guess we realise, and we can make changes. And yourself and like many other people throughout history have shown that ordinary people from the community, without special access or anything like that, can apply pressure and actually make incremental changes. And that's very
and sometimes it's sorry, Tim, I'm saying sometimes it's really actually hard to see the changes, but there has been extraordinary changes over time.
Yeah.
And it is really, like, an example of that is people are still really pissed off at, you know, Queensland Labor and the LNP with regards to coal and gas in Queensland. But the politics of coal in Queensland in particular has changed dramatically in the last 10 years.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's no way that they can start giving away taxpayer money to dirty coal anymore, which they used to. You know, there's no way that they can just invite people in and, you know, what they used to as well, and give away our money to, you know, short, you know, cut the process off, all the sort of dodgy shit that they've done. They still do dodgy shit, but with regards to what people will accept or not, it's changed a lot. But it has been hard work.
So,
and it's involved blatant honesty, it's involved grassroots activism, it's involved, you know, having members of parliament talking about it, it's involved direct action, it's involved a lot.
Right. So it's baby steps.
Yeah, it is baby steps, but it's also people having that vision and demanding what's needed. Ultimately, we live in not only political reality, but we live in an ecological reality. And the ecological reality is if we continue to keep living how we live, powering our economy how we power it, consuming the amount we consume, it goes against the laws of ecological reality. We're, you know, going to bust, and we don't want to bust. And bust is scary, and climate chaos involves, you know, not hundreds of millions of people, we're going towards billions of people. And it is the people who are most marginalised are going to cop it first. What keeps you
positive, Ben? After everything that you've been through, what keeps you positive?
In a theoretical sense, I keep optimistic because of complexity. I know that humans are complex, that human societies are complex, that ecosystems are complex, and yeah, I'm not a doomer that we're all doom and gloom, we're all going to die, but have that understanding of accepting the science and pushing as hard as you can, but not giving up, because none of us know the future, and all of us can impact the future. So, what else are we going to do?
Yeah, we haven't.
For me, that's
we haven't really got a choice other than to keep going.
Yeah, and there is, like, I recognise that in many ways, particularly compared to when I was younger, I'm more of a privileged person, and along with that privilege now, to me, becomes more of it's a duty or a responsibility to do that, and not do that just for my own kids, but for do that beyond that and for ecosystems, because people deserve it. People deserve a happy, comfortable, sustainable life, and they deserve clean air and fresh water and a safe climate. And yeah, there's lots of people who actively push against that, which to us is insane. But politics and social change is often messy, and it involves a contest, and it involves drama and the whole lot. And we've got to, despite what they throw at us, if they're attacking us, it's often a good sign, and we keep going and push on.
It's been really good to talk to you today, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us.
Cool. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And when you do these things, you say, I wonder how that sounds. You're going to have to go. I'm looking forward to listening back.
Yeah, me too, actually. Thanks again, Tim. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Ben.
You've been listening to Beyond the Rona. Captioned audio is available on our YouTube channel, or you can visit beyondtherona.com to catch up on previous episodes or to keep in touch. We'll catch you later.